Hey everyone, so this is Catfish season 6 episode 12. And it's titled Open Investigation. This is because this is not really an episode where there's a catfishing situation going on currently. It happened years before. So the initial email is from Paris Roxanne, who we came into where, when I say we, I mean, like, everybody on, like, Nev and Max and all the producers in Catfish, had come into contact with Paris, about a year or two beforehand, where she had her picture stolen and, by a woman named Jasmine. And she used them to catfish this guy. I don't remember his name right now, but she used Paris Roxanne's photos to catfish, this guy that she was talking to. But that's not a particular case that we're talking about today. We're talking about a catfishing scheme where Paris Roxanne was in the thick of it herself, where she thought she was talking to and dating this guy named Chris Anderson, who is a professional basketball player who played for the Denver Nuggets at the time that she was talking to him. So this is the case that we're talking about today. And it's because of a little situation, little situation that we're gonna reveal. I'm gonna reveal in a second if you've seen this episode. But yeah, so she started talking to him when she liked a photo that she thought Chris had put up back in 2012. She gave him naked pictures to the person pretending to be Chris. Eventually, sometime in the whole thing, she flew out to meet Chris in Denver. At this point, I didn't know what was going on and how this became a catfishing thing, because it seemed like if he was the person that you were talking to, how this became a catfishing scheme and everything. So, but I didn't, because if anybody who knows me knows that I tend to just say shit while watching stuff, because it's like, because I tend to do that a lot when I watch stuff. And so but at this point, I didn't say anything. It was like, well, obviously there has to be something going on, because something has to come up, because otherwise this wouldn't be a catfishing episode if nothing happened. So that's one of that. So I cut my mouth shut and was like, okay, something else going on here. So we come to find out that after she got back from meeting him one weekend, things had started getting weird between them. She started getting threatening texts from him, or from someone who she thought was him, and those threatening texts were about him putting up her naked photos online that she had sent to him. And we had come to find out in the email that she sent to Nev and Max was that she told him that she was 18, when in actuality she was actually 17. So this would be considered child pornography. So when he put her naked photos up online, she told her mom, tried to tell her mom, and her mom freaked out. So that's when her mom called the cops. And then this is when he came under investigation for child pornography. So basically, he got kicked out the Nuggets and had his reputation ruined. And as the investigation went on, the police found out that Chris thought he was talking to Roxanne, and she thought she was talking to Chris. But in all actuality, what was happening is, they were both talking to someone who they thought was each other, but was actually a woman named Shelley. So Roxanne thought she was talking to Chris, but she was actually talking to Shelley. And Chris thought he was talking to Paris, but he was actually talking to Shelley. So the communication was going through Shelley, and Paris was actually talking to Chris. So basically, he got kicked out the Nuggets and had his reputation ruined. And as the investigation went on, the police found out that Chris thought he was talking to Roxanne, and she thought he was talking to Chris. But in all actuality, what was happening is, they were both talking to someone who they thought was each other, but was actually a woman named Shelley. So Roxanne thought she was talking to Chris, but she was actually talking to Shelley. So the communication was going through Shelley, and then back to each other when the other responded. Shelley had created fake profiles and numbers for both Chris and Paris, and Shelley was the one who had put Paris's underage naked photos online. She also pretended to be Paris's mom and threatened to make Chris's relationship with Paris public unless he paid Shelley thousands of dollars, which she ultimately did. She did end up going to jail. We'll find out a little bit later about how long she was in jail, but she went to jail nevertheless. When she got out of jail, Paris was scared and worried that she was going to do this to someone else. So that's why she's reaching out to Nev and Max. So they call her on Skype, and, you know, talk to her for like a hot minute or two. And then, you know, ask her where she is. And she's like, well, I'm in LA. And lo and behold, they're also in LA too. So they hang up the Skype call, go meet her at a local restaurant. So they ask her then to recount everything that happened back in 2012 chronologically. So she explains, she starts off saying, well, I liked his verified Facebook page, and said I had, and then eventually he friend requested me on Facebook with his personal profile, not the public profiles, because if it's a public profile, that public page, then you can't really friend request anybody, you just have to like it. And eventually started texting all the time, which then turned into sexting. However, we also find out that he never actually spoke on the phone. But one day she did get a friend request from a guy named Tom who was claiming to be Chris's best friend. But we will find out that he was actually Shelley. She meaning Paris, told her parents she was dating a guy named, dating a guy from Washington. I don't think it was dating a guy named Washington, excuse me. But she was dating a guy from Washington, and when she had said, oh, I want to go fly to Washington to meet this guy in person, and spend the weekend with him, that's what she told him, was that he was living in Washington when actually she was going to Denver. Because Chris had offered to fly her out to Denver so that they can meet up and whatever on one weekend. So when she got to Denver, Shelley would immediately text each one, meaning she was like on top of it so that she nobody would suspect that they were being catfished or played or anything. So when they got back to his place, Paris brought up Tom, and Chris was like, who's Tom? And she was like, yeah, you know who it is. But he wasn't playing around. He didn't know who the fuck she was talking about. So she just assumed he was trying to mess around with her and just joke around or whatever. And the next day, when he had to go to practice, she was texting Tom, and Tom was like, go into his closet and take a photo with his hats. And she was like, no, I'm not gonna do that, because I feel weird just going through somebody's stuff, just going through somebody's stuff that I just met and actually in person. So I'm not gonna do that. Then, Chris comes back home. They finish out the weekend. They end things nicely. And then she goes home. Tom and Chris then starts texting her a lot, hounding her a lot. And it's about this guy who plays because Tom and Chris apparently play Call of Duty. And there's this guy in Indiana who Chris can't stand because he keeps beating Chris at Call of Duty, and so so eventually they start hounding Paris about going to Indiana, stealing this guy's username and password so that they can take all of his stuff and basically destroy his account. So they're hounding her to do this, and she's feeling the pressure about doing it, but she decides not to do it in the long run. So when she does that, this is what sparked the text message, the threatening text messages, where she was told by Chris that he was gonna have someone come down there and rape her, then kill her and toss her to the side of the street. And then Chris also said that he was threatening to put her naked photos online. So eventually he did, and he's like, well, go check this link out of the pictures that I sent out or put up online. So she looks at it, and she sees the naked pictures that she had sent Chris, and she also sees her phone number, her mother's phone number, and their address up on the website as well. So now she's getting dozens and dozens of calls from random people online, from random people who looked at the photos online, and her mom even got a phone call one time where someone whispered over and over again, you're so beautiful. So this is when she had to come clean to her mom, and that's when they had to call the cops. When she found out what really happened, about how Shelley was the one behind all this, and Chris had nothing to do with putting up her naked photos, she felt really bad about it, because now his life's ruined. Shelley didn't even feel sympathetic about anything, because she's saying, well, Chris should be glad I finally hooked him up with somebody, and Paris should be thanking her. So they decided to try to talk to Chris and this Constable Gord Olson, who is a mounted police officer a Royal Mounted Police Officer in Canada, who eventually took over the case on the Canadian side when it was found out that Shelley was living in Canada. So they have her, text Olson's number. So they leave and then try to get a hold of Chris, but they don't get in touch with him ever in the episode, as we will find out. So Max has this idea to talk to the Sklar brothers, who are twin sports reporters on ESPN and a couple other sports channels. So they go to speak with them, and the Sklar brothers explain that Chris wasn't a beloved basketball player as Michael Jordan and LeBron James are. And him having tattoos covering his neck and his arms and his hands didn't help with his image at all when this whole thing came about. What also didn't help was that he was suspended for 2 years because he violated the league's drug policy. When he tried to clean up, he started volunteering with kids. But then the news hit that he was investigated for child pornography, and he became essentially damaged goods. No one would pick him up on a basketball team, even though he was only being investigated for child pornography. They then decided to try to get in touch with Shelley after, speaking with the Sklar brothers, and they got lucky because Paris then texts saying that she got in touch with Constable Gord, who wants to meet with them as soon as possible when they get to Canada. So they then make their way to Canada, or Winnipeg, Canada, and speak to Gord Olson. in May 2012 was when he was contacted by Detective Sean Krantz, who was investigating in Denver, Colorado. Olsen was told by Krantz that Krantz had found phone numbers and IP addresses tracing back to Manitoba, Canada, and numbers and IP addresses traced back to Shelley's house. So they eventually found out that Shelley had created quite a bit of email addresses, so she could make fake profiles. And the fake town profile was used to connect with the woman in Texas for a number of years. Shelley eventually used the woman in Texas as part of blackmailing schemes to get money out of Chris, and then Olsen reveals that they had gone down to Texas. He had gone down to Texas to talk with the woman who was being used. And he told her that she was really talking to a woman named Shelley Chartier. She hadn't figured out that Tom wasn't who he said he was, and she was devastated by that. Shelley was then sentenced to 18 months in jail in Canada, and we find out there's an active warrant out for Shelley's arrest in Colorado, and in the U.S., she can get sentenced from 24 to 48 years in prison. So that's a hell of a lot more time than she was given in Canada. Nev then asks if Olsen can set up a meeting with her, and he's like, yes, I can try to do that for you. So they head up even further north to where Shelley actually lives, to meet up with her. They get to this town called the Peg or something like that. I think, I don't remember. I didn't write it down, but it's like the something, which is about an hour or two, or maybe a couple hours away from where Shelley actually lives. So Nev and Max go there and wait for Olsen to come back and tell them that they can meet up with her. And so they're looking at the court documents on Shelley's case, and we learn that she was considered a hermit, or what the town called the ghost of Easterville, where she would rarely leave her house because she had to take care of her bedridden mother. And that is when Gord, texts them saying, yeah, you can talk to them. Here's a phone number to make a meeting. So they call her, and a man answers. Turns out it's her husband, Rob. They ask if it would be alright to come up and meet with her, and eventually she's like, yes, when she gets on the phone. So they drive up to her house to meet with her. Once inside, this is not the actual meeting where they, get to the heart of what was, heart of asking the questions. It's just the initial meeting. So they go inside. Shelley, find out Shelley and Rob married two Christmases before. They talk for a few minutes and then leave. And then they come back the next day. They go back and talk with Shelley, and she's like, well, I saw Chris post a status on his verified Facebook account saying that his team won. He also noticed that Paris had left a message on that status saying, hit me up, here's my number, with her actual number on there. And so that's when she started talking to Paris as Chris. Excuse me. And then Paris started texting nude photos, and this is where Shelley claims that she became uncomfortable with it and talked to the woman from Texas about it. Shelley is claiming she always talked to the woman in Texas as herself and never as Tom. I'll get to that in a second. She also started texting Chris as Paris and got him to send nudes so she could send nudes to Paris. After Chris and Paris spent the week together, Paris apparently, according only to Shelley, that Paris freaked out because she saw Chris in a photo with another girl. And apparently, according to Paris, or according to Shelley, Paris wouldn't let it go. So this is when she threatened Paris, and then backed it up by putting the nudes online, putting Paris's nudes online. And then she then asked for advice from her friend in Texas, who told her to delete the app so she wouldn't be caught, but she was anyway. So Nev brings up the point. Brings up the good point that there's a vast difference in between what you say is going on with this woman in Texas and what the woman in Texas is actually claiming herself, because the woman in Texas is claiming that you talked to her as Tom for years, and when Orson finally caught up with met up with her, that's when she found out that Shelley wasn't Tom wasn't who he said he was. And Shelley is claiming that she's always talked to this woman in Texas as herself. So, and she's like, well, I have no reason to lie about this. This woman in Texas isn't a victim at all, and I just really she's a willing participant. I have no reason to lie for this. I'm like, yes, you do. You have every fucking reason to lie about this. You're claiming, you're doing this to make yourself look better, because not only is the story that you're saying about this Texas woman not adding up to what this woman in Texas is actually saying herself, but what you're saying about what happened in general with Paris is not adding up to what Paris is actually saying herself. So I'm inclined to believe what the woman in Texas and what Paris is saying, Paris are saying are true. What you're saying is absolutely shit. It's not worth a damn thing. So I'm inclined to believe them over you. So, and again, he's like, well, if what you're saying is true, then the vast majority of what you pled guilty to should have been shared by this woman in Texas. And like and Shelley's like, well, I pled guilty because I was pregnant at the time. I'm like, that's bullshit. Who the fuck cares if you're pregnant? Who the fuck cares? Like, if you're innocent, you'd plead your case no matter what it was. You'd fucking do it. Like, you'd plead your case as innocent no matter what. It doesn't matter. So, so eventually they leave, and like Max is like, well, do you believe her? And he was like, well, yeah, I'm conflicted. And he was doing this whole voiceover thing the entire episode, and he's like, well, I'm inclined to believe that she's telling the truth, that she wants to turn her life around. No, I don't believe it, because if she was, she wouldn't be saying something completely different than what both the woman in Texas is saying and what Paris is saying. So no, I don't believe her. I do not believe her that she's willing to just stop catfishing. I don't believe it. Nah. I think as soon as her probation's up, she's gonna be like, she's gonna do it. She's just gonna start doing it again. That's all. Because she violates her parole. She's gonna be in jail a lot longer than she was the first time. So anyway, so we find out that Chris was eventually exonerated and picked up by the Miami Heat basketball team. Paris is still haunted by what Shelley did and is discovering people continuing to steal and use her pictures on fake profiles. Shelley says that she's hoping to relocate with her husband and mom after finishing her probation. No, it's like I said, I don't believe that Shelley is done catfishing. I don't, for a second. I think as soon as her probation is up, she's gonna pick up and relocate, but it's because she wants to start catfishing again. So that's just me. Anyway, so next week on Catfish, they're bringing back old catfishes to see where they are now. With that being said, I don't think I will recap and review that particular episode, next week's episode. I'll watch it, of course, but I'm not going to recap and review it. So I'm going to be off next week for Catfish, because I don't feel the need to recap and review that. So, I might change my mind, but it's not likely. But anyway, so that is with this episode of Catfish. I'll see you guys maybe next week, but definitely 2 weeks from now. Bye.